before I forget, and then let everyone get a good look at this screen here, this good looking guy here sitting here on my left, on your right. Say hello to Justin from Versus. We're here at their studio. Let me pin our spotlight for everyone so you and I can see. Make sure we look relatively handsome.
Yeah, you're looking good.
First of all, cheers. Welcome to the weekly briefing.
Oh, yes.
It is 5 o'clock here in New York, so this is allowed. So Justin's a good friend of mine, and I want to let him introduce himself. But we're here at the Versus studio, and I'm stoked really to pick his brain in response to this question of pitching, right? Pitching, and specifically, we're going to talk about a very narrow question about pitching of when do you pitch for free? When do you not pitch for free? There were some good comments in the community today, so we'll get into that. But anyways, say hi, introduce yourself for anybody who doesn't know you and doesn't know Versus. What's the story?
Hey, everyone. I'm Justin Barnes. I am the ECD and one of the founders here at Versus. The other founder is Samantha Gabriello. We're Versus. We're a creative production studio here in New York. We're the creative production studio here in New York.
Talk to me.
Yeah. So much going on here. I feel like it's a whole nother conversation, but working across live action, animation, motion graphics, edit. We have a huge team across all of that. We have another Versus head of entertainment sales, Tony Cadillac, on here as well. Hey, Tony.
What's up, Tony?
Hello.
Love it.
Thanks for the call out.
So what's maybe tell us what's been like, what's the Versus wheelhouse? What's the thing that like makes you guys who you are and what you do, so everyone kind of goes, oh, I get kind of the box to put you in.
Yeah. No, God, great question. When we started Versus, this is our 10th year. So we really started as a kind of medium agnostic studio. So we weren't trying to be an animation studio or just live action or just design or motion graphics. It was for us more about the idea. And we've built a team around all of that. So, what we're known for is bringing together all of that. So, using everything in Versus toolbox, from live action to animation to design to whatever that entails for the project. Every project different, of course.
So I forgot to mention, this is the weekly briefing. Forgot to do that. Because this is the 30-minute like chunk of time that usually it's myself and my partner Tim from RevThink, where we get together and we say, hey, what's the thing that people are talking about this week? What's the trend that everyone needs to know about, or what are we seeing that we feel like owners that are running studios and production companies should be aware of? So if you're here for the first time, welcome. If you're whatever, long time caller, first time, what is it?
First time listener,
first time caller. Yeah, one of those. Anyways, welcome. So let's get into this this topic though this week, because I'll just say that there's this constant nagging issue, and a lot of them around the question of pitching. And we're not going to solve any major issues regarding pitching today, because as long as I've been in the industry, people have been bitching about pitching, right? Is this true for you?
Yeah, always, of course. It's everyone's least favorite thing to do.
Right.
But understandably so.
Yeah, understandably so. And I share all those gripes, and I've been through all those rant sessions and agree 100% with all of that.
Yeah.
Now, that said, does Versus pitch?
We pitch a lot.
Okay, and why is that?
Pitch. It's just the nature of the business. It's the nature of the industry. We had a huge pitch today. It's an inevitable thing that I think that you have to sort of, learn to love, or just kind of be that complainer the whole time.
Okay.
You gotta come at it with a love for it and a reason and a strategy for it, which I think is most important. I think all the complainers that don't love pitching maybe are looking at it a little bit wrong, or don't have a strategy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So do you guys pitch mostly agencies, mostly brands, or both, or something else?
So yeah, we work a lot with agencies, but we also work at the brand level, at the CMO level as well. So, some pitches are against like 72 and Sunny, and some pitches are against like Buck or Laundry or Mascolo, or who else?
Yeah, who else is here?
Yeah.
Who else are you pitching against? But wait, I heard you say sometimes you might pitch against somebody like 72 and Sunny.
At the brand level, yeah. So coming in to solve more of a creative business problem with production as a part of that solution.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So
But that's a whole different set of pitching. And that's.
is
a
it
whole
safe to
different-
say there's a whole different strategy when you're pitching a brand directly, especially against an agency?
It all depends on the client. I mean, we work a lot with a brand at the sort of like at the brand or the brand agency level as well. So that is more of like a traditional pitching, like you would at like a network or an agency or something like that. But, you know, fundamentally, I think they're all the same.
Okay.
Some paid, some are not paid.
Okay. So let's get into the meaty question.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about this issue, I think about a month ago on the briefing. And I saw a comment you dropped in the chat that just kind of whizzed by. And I was like, whoa, I gotta call Justin on that one. Cause I actually totally agree. You said paid pitching sucks or paid pitches blow or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's that they're shit. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about that. Why would you say that?
Well, I mean, you know, I get that like you should be being paid for your work, but there's no right answer. I think you have to sort of approach it from the situation rather than just like there's a hard and fast rule. We don't pitch for free or we only pitch for money. I mean, you know, the obvious things are like, you know, are you selling your $1 million idea for like the 5K pitch fee or the 10K pitch fee? If so, I'd love to have you pitch some ideas for verses. You know, I think that's it, because you don't own that idea, right? The second you take $1 for it.
Okay, so I'm glad to hear you say this because I have a very similar opinion. And just so we're really clear for everyone listening here, is if Versus pitches, brand, agency, what have you, and they pay you $1 and there's some paper trail.
Yeah.
There's a very reasonable claim they make called this is work for hire, right? Read the Copyright Act of 1976. They own it. And so when they give you their little measly pitch fee and you're like, well, it's better than nothing. What they're really doing is potentially buying, like you said, maybe $1 million idea for $1,000.
Yeah, I think how we look at it at Versus, like if you're taking money for a pitch, it's a job. It's not a pitch. You need to treat it as such. You need to get into that mindset. It's a job with a shitty budget, but a lot of upsell on top of that. So you do need to over deliver. What they're basically saying to, and this is of course very controversial, is I'll give you, you know, $5,000 or $10,000 to give us your best ideas. And for that 5 or 10 grand, we're expecting you to completely over deliver more of it. Like it's a $50,000 job. Like, so, and then we may or may not use you for that idea, but we will own that idea and we will take it and do it ourselves, or we will have you do it in the best case scenario.
Right.
So when you're pitching on that level, you need to be pitching ideas that only maybe you can execute, or attaching talent that only you have access to, or whatever that's going to be. There's got to be something that can't go anywhere else but to Versus.
Okay, clever.
You know, that's
so this in a way is it's almost like part of your positioning in a way, because you're saying like if we're gonna pitch something that the client can't actually do on their own because we have a certain attached talent to it, we have an exclusive, we have some technology, some IP, something that's right. Like,
or skill set, or whatever that is. Yeah, of course.
Like good luck trying to pull that off on your own.
Yeah, I mean, we've all taken the jobs that were like, the budget's not great, but it could lead to more work. Essentially, this is just a really cheap version of that, is taking money for the pitch. Now, on the other side, by the way, there's no right answer for this. I'm going to contradict myself 1,000 times. There's no other way.
Fair enough.
But you should be getting paid for the work that you're doing. You know, so it's a tough place to be. I think that when you're looking at pitchings, you need to sort of, I hear a lot of like, well, I don't want to like spend a bunch of money and just lose it and not get it. I think that you need to get out of that like money mindset of the pitch. That's where I think a lot of people in studios are, meaning like, you know, every studio needs this like yearly pitch budget that goes against the P&L. That's just a part of doing business, right? And that like, that's the sort of driving force to taking on pitches, not losing the money. So if you can kind of shift your mindset around a little bit, like, look, you know, you're going to spend this, let's say it's 100,000 just for a round number. You're going to spend 100,000 a year on pitching. You already know that, like, maybe you could start looking at pitching in a different way. It's almost like now you're hedging your bets. You're not worried about losing the money. You're saying, where's the money better allocated to, rather than, I don't want to spend 5K and not get this job, or 10K or whatever it's going to be.
Right.
Or it would cost us 15,000 to do the pitch properly. All right, well, we've got a budget of 100,000. Like, is this pitch best suited for this? Or do you think you want to maybe hold your money back and go for something that you have a little bit more confidence? Shifting from that money to confidence sort of mindset, I think is really important on pitching. And then you start to look at things differently. So we have an annual pitch budget here versus, and we say, like, does this fit into that budget?
Right. And
Is it worth it?
if
And
you basically burn through that budget as the year goes by.
And if you're careless, then it's like, what are we in May? And it's May, and you've got no money left in the pitch budget. Yeah.
But at least you have a data point to measure against and be like, hey, do we want to invest more or not?
Yeah.
So I would
It becomes confidence.
I would, yeah. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
No. I mean, that it's less about like, well, it's going to cost us this much money, and the client this and that, which is a whole other conversation about like how you sort of judged that you should be in the pitch or not, or whether to move forward on it. That's a huge part of this.
So I would call that that line item on a budget, I would call that an indirect cost that we label calculated losses.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like you're comped at the casino.
Yeah. I think also, so I'm going to argue both sides of this free versus not free, right? So just when I say this, I know it's going to be like, whoa, that's pretty gutsy for Joel to say that. But tell me if you agree or disagree.
Okay.
For someone who says, we refuse to pitch for free because whatever, like that's just giving away money, investing money foolishly, blah, blah, blah. I know when I ran my studio, I made all kinds of crazy bets. Pitching for free sometimes was just one. I invested in an office space. I didn't know that I could get a return on that investment. I was like, wow, I'm spending 12 grand a month on office space. Do I fill it with people and hopefully get jobs and make money? Sure. But it's a guess, it's a bet. And then when I hire somebody, I commit to paying that person every 2 weeks a lot of money, like thousands and thousands. Do I know I'm going to get a return on that investment? No. But I pay that person and I pay that person. And it's like,
and you do your due diligence before you make that. That's the same with pitching. You have to sort of really understand what you're getting into. You can't just say like, yeah, sure, we'll go for it. Like, you need to be asking the right questions. You need to be understanding and being very confident going into it that you have a shot at it at least, right, or that you're the right studio for it. And if it's out of your comfort zone, that's not a problem. But yeah, like, you need to, spend a little bit of money on some out of comfort zone type situations.
Okay, so now let's agree that
Well, I'm gonna meet
for free is BS.
for coffee.
What?
Okay, right? All right, I'm gonna mute somebody. Somebody's
Henry recommended that.
let's mute that and mute that and mute that. Sorry, we got a couple of bogeys on here. So if your microphone's on, please mute yourself. So let's also agree, yeah, that
working for money is bogus.
no, that doing work for free is bogus.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, of course.
That's bullshit.
Yeah.
So there are times when we would never pitch for free. When, in your opinion, when is that?
Times when we would never pitch for free.
Like when you're like, heck
okay,
yeah, this we should definitely be paid.
Great point. I think when you're going into a pitch, are you going against other companies? Then I would say maybe it's best to pitch for free. If you're going into a network just to solely pitch ideas, then you should be getting paid for that.
Okay, and what's the rationale there? I agree, but I'm curious to hear your thinking.
The thinking on that is like the company is paying for you to come up with ideas that they may or may not use, that they may or may not execute. So you're gonna have to sell those ideas to them. If they're saying we want to put you against a bunch of other companies and your ideas, then that just seems like a little bit like, well, I don't want you to steal my ideas. I would rather sort of
Got it.
I'd rather own them walking out of this, because you're talking to myself, you're talking to state, and you're talking to sibling rivalry. Like, okay, well, I'm gonna go into this knowing that we're right for it. I'm confident. I'm happy to like put the money in against the pitch budget for us to make this happen. But if the network comes to us and say, we're just looking for like ideas because we want to sort of pitch this to the higher up, or just pitch us ideas.
Yep.
Then pay me for those ideas.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now I'm not going to put you on the spot with numbers, but I will put myself on the spot, because I remember one time it was TV1. Do you know the network?
Yes.
I don't know if they're still on the air, but I remember we were doing some work for them, and the lead creative called us and was like, hey, we want to see if you want to jump into a pitch to rebrand this entire network. I was like, that's interesting. You're paying an industry standard pitch fee, right? And he said, well, what's an industry standard pitch fee? And I literally made it up on the spot. I said, it's 20 grand.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, whoa, let me go talk to some people. Call me back the next day. And he was like, you got it.
That's a good pitch fee.
Okay.
That's good.
What do you
Yeah,
think?
That's unusual. It's unusual at production company level, I think. Maybe not. I've seen 5, I've seen 8, 10, 12, 15.
But what do you think of the strategy that I used?
I
It's
think
pretty good. Come
pretty
on.
good. Yeah.
I just pulled the number out of my, you know what?
I mean, did you ask yourself, if he just came at you and said, I have a job for you and I have 20K, it could lead to more work, would you have done it?
Yeah, right. Like the way I viewed it was, if we were just going to create this document of ideas and show this, what would we charge for it? And I was like, probably 20 grand. And then it gave us the confidence to just like nail the job.
Win-win. Yeah.
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 But of course, and by the way, what was ironic was they awarded us the job and we declined.
That's
Because in the process of working, yeah, no, you're nuts. Well, in the process of working
they
with that
spent all the
client,
money on the pitch. That's why.
but well, no, what happened was when working with them, we realized they were not a great fit for us. They were kind of crazy. And
Okay.
we were like, wow, we don't want to get in bed with this several $100,000 deal. So we'll just take our pitch fee and go.
That's brave. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Most all companies, including us, would have never learned that lesson. Yeah.
You'd like, take it.
Yeah.
Okay. What else? When else are there any other thoughts on when you pitch and you are like, of course, we're going to charge for a pitch fee?
Well, I would love to say that we can sort of dictate that, but I think we'll already know getting into it if they have money for a pitch or not. I would say on the agency side, it would probably 1 out of a million pitches that'll have money against it. On the brand side, it's a little bit of a different story, depending on how high you're up on the funnel. On the network side, I think it's a little bit more common, but still not common at all
Right.
these days.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there were a couple comments that people dropped in the community that I was like, this would be fun. So if you dropped a comment, or if you have a comment, of course, drop it in the chat here. But in the community, here's what I'm going to share. I'll actually share my screen. That'll make it even more fun. Because if I share my screen on this thread here, okay. So we got a great comment from Kelly. Kelly, you're awesome. Thank you for this. You're going to love this one. You ready?
Yeah. Andor's great. Awesome company.
Yeah, right. Amazing shop. She's like, I feel like a broken record, but I just have to get this out there. I believe you and we should literally never pitch for free. To suggest otherwise is putting a tremendous amount of unnecessary pressure or expectations on studios that simply cannot afford to pitch for free, and reinforces some terrible behaviors that clients have come to expect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. It promotes a toxic client relationship environment in the industry, and it feels just a little bit, okay, a lot, like we would be enabling some very bad habits from agencies and clients to expect work without any responsibility on their end. In other words, it is our responsibility to define what the relationship of pitching is in order to change it from something that is exploitive or exploitative. I don't know. I might have to check my dictionary. And toxic to something that is beneficial and nurturing. Hopefully y'all touch on this in your talk. So I basically just said, agree 100%, but what's your thought?
Kelly's not wrong. It is toxic, but it is the industry. I think that if we were to all band together and unionize and try and figure out a way to do that, like, yeah, but this is not like an uncommon practice. I mean, architects face the same thing. Like, and by the way, the agencies are also pitching for free in most cases these days to sort of get that work they've been working on for, 8 months to bring it to a place that it's ready for production, to call you to have you pitch on it.
Right.
I also think that, looking at like my everyday life or our everyday lives, like I like kind of triple bid the plumber to come like fix something in my apartment, or something like that. Like the risk management is a very real thing. Like you want to risk manage yourself. it's interesting because a lot of times when I see that we're hiring a freelancer, I kind of find myself using pitch language that an agency has given me a little bit like, well, do you have any work like that?
Right.
And I'm like, shit, I'm like kind of trying to pitch this guy a little bit because I want to mitigate like my risk. The agency wants to mitigate theirs. The brand wants to mitigate theirs by doing this. That's all this really is. But Kelly, like I agree. I mean, it is extremely toxic, but you can like learn to love the toxic and figure out a way to maneuver through it, I think, or whatever. But listen, you want to start the revolution. I'm with you.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny because the comment I made in here to Kelly was, I was like, agree 100%. I said that said, we are not winning this argument. We've been arguing about this for at least 25 years. So it's safe to say we're never going to win it because, right, it would require us to all unionize and all that sort of stuff. And believe me, I was at the center of that for a few years. But I had said the same thing you just said. What to do, don't despair. I've seen some very shrewd maneuvers that we can make, which tilt the odds much more in our favor. So I think there's just like I don't know, I call it like a soul search of setting boundaries, looking back and saying, where did I learn from my mistakes?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I was abused, well, the first time I get abused, I would say, shame on you.
Yeah.
But the next time I get abused, it's kind of a shame on me. If I go through the process and if I don't start changing how I go through the process and knowing my boundaries. And yeah, I think you probably have a lot more to say about it.
You're going to get burned. Like no matter how much questions you ask and prep and research into the client, into everything else, like there's going to be a time where they're like, you know, this company did this one thing, or the agency may say, look, we left it up to the company, they went another way. Or, you know, if you're not doing your kind of due diligence, there's a reco to begin with or something, and you're going, and there's no way to avoid it.
Yep.
You just got to kind of like not take it personally, pick yourself back up and just like keep going for it. And that's it. But it's awful. And Kelly's right. Like that's a shitty way to sort of do business and live and put all of your talent and all of your, like, you know, your studio and your passion and your life into the hands of like a 22-year-old Miami ad school person who just got out, who's making the decisions for that is increasingly alarming. However, the goal is that you pitch, you win, you get in with a client. The next time it doesn't have to become a pitch. And then you kind of repeat that process. So we pitch a lot here versus I don't even know the number we have so far this year, but let's say it's like 30 pitches so far this year. You know, there's also like 150 jobs that we didn't have to pitch for, but that we have been pitching for over the last 5 years or whatever that is. So there's like a conversion that you try and get to. But we also can't forget, because I'm just going to counteract myself at all times. You can't forget that like there's a mandate at the agency level from P&G to Unilever to all of the major brands that there has to be a triple bid and a pitch with it, even in projects that are like $60,000. So insane. Wow. So they're asking you to do a favor and then you can pitch on it as well. Those just stay away from.
Now, I'll just say this because this is a big loaded statement. The way that I navigated pitches as I learned how to not be abused was by employing maneuvers where I would basically smoke out the client to find out whether or not we were the favorite.
That's exactly what has to be done here. You have to go in and you have to say, you have to start asking questions, and you have to ask a lot of them. If someone is expecting you to work for free, you have earned the right to ask any question you want.
Thank you.
Some are a bit taboo and you have to have a very close relationship with them. But I would ask like, all right, who are the other studios involved here? Actually, you don't even ask that yet. That's a taboo question.
You can.
How many other studios are involved? Oh, you're triple bidding, so 2 others. How long have they had to pitch on this? If you're calling me late. If they are, that might say that you're maybe a check bid in this situation.
Yep.
Or somebody has dropped out, which happens. So you know that going in, you can decide if you want to do that. Who's the decision maker? Am I going to talk to them at the brief and talk to them at the pitch process as well? If that's not, make sure that happens. And if it doesn't, you've been screwed over. On the call, that very first briefing call, people underestimate that briefing call tremendously. There's an opportunity to sway it to a single bid situation. I've seen it happen, and we did it last week. you can absolutely sway, and that the chemistry and the excitement on that call is very crucial. And that is your leader to going into the pitch where everyone can't wait to see your ideas. We're thinking about you and can't wait for yours to come in the whole time. And one thing that we do at Versus, which I think is the most crucial,
Okay.
is we do a check-in before the pitch is due. So that's what today's pitch was for. So the pitch is actually due on Friday. We ask, so we talk to them. Let's say you talk to somebody, today's what, Wednesday. So you say, all right, I talked to an agency on Wednesday. They want to pitch by next Friday. It's quick. We'll make it work. I'd love a check-in on Tuesday, right? So you check in, you show the work that you're up to, you show the work in progress pitch, you get feedback from that, and then you apply that to there. So what does that do? You've already established a working relationship with this client. You're showing work and you're getting feedback. It's almost like you're already working with them again. And you're making the pitch better. It's going to resonate more with all of them. And when you hop on the phone, hey, me again, love that thinking, like, good to see you guys. That's one thing you can do that really works a lot. And we do that every single pitch. And if they're like, well, the creatives are really busy and all these red flags start coming up, you're like,
Bingo.
Is this real?
Dude, you just used the term that I use, which is red flags. Because I think there's like 6 or 7 moves that you can make, right, as you go through the pitch process that has nothing to do with the creative.
Yeah.
It's like gently.
No, good EP is so crucial in the pitch process. It's a real great sort of synergy between like a good EP, good sales, just making sure this is real, and then the good creative and the good team behind it, and then putting all that together. And then the good follow-up, like there's a little Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
There's a little this, there's a lot that kind of goes involved in it. It's not just saying, yeah, we'll do it, throwing together a deck and then like walking them through it. There's an art to this.
Like one of my moves would be, we're going to have a check-in and collaborate. And before I even jump into a pitch, and if they go, no, this is a blind pitch, we don't allow that. That's a huge red flag. I might just bow out right there.
Right.
Because that's telling me they don't care.
It is.
They're not invested.
It is, or they're too busy, or, some companies like Unilever, for instance, will take all the branding, everything out of the pitch. So it comes down to idea only. They have no idea who's in it.
I
And
see.
you can look at it, and
Wow.
which I think is really cool. Like it just comes down
It
to
makes it more
great
pure.
creative, and there's a set budget, and
Wow.
everyone's at that budget, because there's a lot of bottom feeder studios who are just trying to like buy their way into it. And that's, I'll say this, and I know it's a little wild statement, but like, the enemy is not the agency or the brand. The enemy is ourselves. It's the people who are going to go in and undercut and buy the job because they think they can like leverage it in some other way. That's
So-
what we have to worry about. I don't think we
Right.
should be worried about we should be worrying about pitching and working for free, but we should be like worrying about we're all on the same page on a budget. So it comes down to ideas.
So I think it's incumbent on us and everyone here. How do we teach the younger generation, right? The people who are just starting their studios, give them permission to not do that. You
Yeah.
don't have to undercut. You don't have to, cut your prices, all that stuff. All right, let me get to one more question because
Yeah, no, sorry.
we're almost out of time. We're having fun. I love this. All right, so Jordan had a great point here when he talked about, he's a director, okay?
Yeah,
So he's saying, as a live action production company and director, I wish agencies had to pay a small, maybe $2,000 minimum stipend for the pitch and those pesky treatments. It would make them think more carefully about who they bid and result in better pitches. We spend thousands in visual research and writing. I write my own and assembling these darn things. Often they are not even read by the creatives. We pass on projects when agency bids more than 3 directors. It says they don't know who they're looking for. So here, see what you think of my comment.
he's right. I love when you said, I wish that, yeah. I do think though, that's right. It does take a lot. The director puts so much work and so much love into it. And it's heartbreaking when, that work just sort of gets unnoticed or gets passed by for somebody else. I agree with the 2000 sort of thing. Maybe there's this like little thing to hire a designer to put it together. Great note too, that the agency doesn't read the pitches. So I've been talking to a ton of agency creatives about this exact thing. I'm compiling like a little sort of best of how to sort of work with agencies on pitches. They don't read them. And if your pitch is coming in with a shitload of copy, it's just going to be like, oh my God, long-winded. It needs really poignant, big, this is what we want to do. it's almost a less is more situation. And then you talk and you back it up from there, and then just beautiful visuals. But
So
that's the whole thing.
let's see if you like my comment here, because one thing I said, and I know we're about over time, so we're going to try and wrap it up here. But I said, I love when you said, I wish they had to pay, but my thought is that might be lazy thinking. Instead of what if pay meant something else than cash? What if you forced their hands so they had to pay in time, energy, commitment, or loss of options, control, freedom, or status? For example, when you say we pass on projects when agencies bid more than 3 directors, that's a perfect example of making someone pay in a form other than cash. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like basically saying,
Yeah.
hey, if we're going to play ball, like what if you were on a call and you said, hey, we're going to submit our treatment and you guys are going to read the treatment and we'll get back together and review. And you said, by the way, if you guys don't read the treatment, just, I know you will, of course, you're nice people, but if you don't read the treatment, we're going to bounce. I mean, because if
in a perfect world, yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, if you're dealing with people who are not freaking reading your creative and your treatment, then do you really want that as a client? And are you even going to win? Because what are they judging you based on? Like, you're the third bid. I'm sorry. We don't like to admit it, but I think if we're honest with ourselves, we can smoke out what's going on.
It's pretty easy when you've been, but unfortunately you have to have been burned a lot of times to sort of recognize that. And that's just a part of it. And that's life.
And not be over invested in that one, like, this is the one, we need this job. It's like, man, we better have 3 or 5 jobs that we're pitching over the next year.
It's a numbers game. If you're pitching 52 projects a year and you're winning 41 of them, like, you know how to sort of maintain your budget and you know what you're doing wrong. I think the learning from a pitch is a big thing as well. Like, losing a pitch sucks, but there's so much to be learned from that. And I think you've got to follow up and be like, we lost, we gave it our all. Why?
Yeah.
We'll never make that mistake again. But sometimes, I don't know, sometimes there's just no reason for it other than.
Yeah, sometimes you just say we can't win them all.
Things beyond your control. Yeah.
Right. Sometimes it's.
And by the way, and a lot of times we'll work with an agency and they'll say, like, we want to work with you guys. We need a pitch. You're the reco going in. And we say, awesome, that's great. That's what we worked for. But let's not forget there's 2 other people who have no idea that's going on.
Oh, well said.
So,
right.
You can be on both sides.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, hey, we're winning this time, but hey,
yeah,
that means the same agency, every other time they call us, we might be the check bid.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
So I say, I hope they asked a lot of questions. They know who they are.
Right. All right. So we're going to wrap it up.
So we solved nothing.
Right. We solved nothing, but we've hopefully given you, I'll say this. I heard a great line that knowledge does not lead to insight. Knowledge gives you choices.
True.
Kind of an interesting thought for you. So I'm working on this thing that I'm calling, I shared it with you a little bit, this derail the pitch concept.
Yeah.
So when I have it ready, I want to get your feedback on it, because it's a lot of this whole, like, how do we smoke people out and know if we're the favorite or if we're the check bid and all that. So at some point we'll come back and circle back on that.
Yeah. Maybe I have Munchausen syndrome or whatever. But like,
which one is that?
Where you're just like this, you just learn to love your captor.
Okay.
It is, but whatever that is.
Interesting.
So it's a part of the business. You can be smart and learn to love it, and you can take your L's with your wins, and that's all you can do.
Well, if you appreciated this conversation with Justin, please give him a high five or a shout out in the comments. Thank you very much.
I hope we're pitching against all of you soon.
Very soon. He hopes to beat you all very soon in an upcoming pitch. I know this guy. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Again, Justin, you're awesome. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, everybody.
This is great.
Yeah.
So this was the weekly briefing. We'll see you next week. Until then, if you're not in the community, we'll see you. You should jump in at revthink.com/community. For the rest of you folks, see you next time.